Soul was one of my most anticipated films of 2020, purely because I had no idea how they were going to distribute it. I'm even surprised that they released the film on Disney Plus with no fees attached, as they attached a fee to watch Mulan earlier this year, but they didn't for Soul, in addition to releasing it on December 25th, a wee gift from the corporate heads, if you will. Hi, I'm Andrew and I make videos on media, and here's your spoiler warning. Without further ado, Soul is kinda terrible, and initially I wasn't gonna make this video, but I felt compelled to after seeing a lackluster ending, the ending being the main thing why I automatically sorta dislike this film. Endings in shows or movies is what can doom a property to mediocrity, or can elevate it to a new plane of greatness. I was invested in Soul the very second that trailer released last year, as it looked like a 180 from the little box Pixar confined themselves to. You saw the epic, sprawling realistic world of New York, coupled with the characters that embody the classic Pixar style, and this voiceover that spoke to every individual viewer. I never expected a Pixar movie to come off this mature, and it is mature. I can confidently say that Soul is the most mature Pixar movie on premise alone, as it plays with the idea of life and death. Joe Gardner, our protagonist, is a band teacher who's been pursuing his passion his entire life, music. His dream is to have a career in jazz. His opportunity comes when a past student comes and tells Joe about an opening, and Joe gets ecstatic and goes to show his talent to Dorothea Williams, who, despite showing up like twice, I really liked her character, and the analogy she gives later on in the film is something you can think about even after the film is over. The gist of Joe is that he loves life, and after impressing Dorothea Williams, he finally got his big break, an ounce of success after a pound of failure, if you will. The theme of Soul revolves around passion and purpose, and the conflation that Joe makes, yet it's only due to 22, another character, that Joe begins to see the bigger picture. Okay, so going back to the plot, Joe falls, dies, and he's away to the great beyond. However, he's scared of death and runs away, managing to go to the great before, the place where souls are shaped in preparation to go to Earth. There's a bunch of exposition on what exactly this place is for, getting your spark, giving you a badge, whatever, I don't really care. However, Joe finds out that he can cheat death if he becomes an instructor, helping another soul find their spark. This leads into 22, the perfect foil for Joe, and that's because she represents the pessimistic and insecure character who's afraid of the world, and we see how stubborn she is because 22 has had notable figures throughout history try and help her find her spark. Muhammad Ali, Abraham Lincoln, the list goes on. The entire idea that 22 needed a spark to go to Earth, and Joe couldn't give her the spark, and he'd have to go to the great beyond if he failed, and the great beyond itself is attached to a really cool leitmotif. Now, if it wasn't played off for comedy, it would be really ominous, which is what I like.
To the great beyond.
This kind of leads into the music, which is another aspect of the film I enjoy a lot. Terry, the quote-unquote antagonist, has a theme, which is surprisingly imposing considering he's a really well-constructed line. Like, literally is a line. The music that Joe is attached to as well. It all helps to give the movie a much more unique identity. I'm not a music guy, I don't pretend to be, but the mostly minimalistic sound of the great before excellently contrasts New York. The visuals in this film too are a mixed bag for me personally. What takes place in real life is beautiful, with incredibly intricate landscapes and a drop-dead gorgeous lighting system, which makes the world look gorgeous, by the way. And what takes place in the great before and the great beyond is boring, with the exception of a few scenes, which I would have loved to see more of, but unfortunately a large portion of the film is blue blobs floating around a B-Tech vaporwave background. It's not bad though, I want to make that clear. I do not dislike Soul. Well, I kind of do, but I don't at the same time. I realised that in a second watch. I'm just disappointed with the film, because watching the film, I built an expectation and subconsciously wanted the ending to be something it isn't. Additionally, I'd probably grade a film differently from how other critics would grade films, as the ending in any film is such a large part of it for me. It's what allows a film to be memorable and to be something larger than. Yeah, it's alright. Films that are overly simplistic in narrative, I'll use the example of Sonic the Hedgehog the movie. It's a simplistic enough narrative, with an equilibrium, disruption, and a new equilibrium, an easy to follow story, and a film that can only leave me feeling so much. Contrast that with The Truman Show. I'm not going to spoil it, but that movie leaves you feeling something, a deeper thought, probably having a domino effect in the why it's one of the greatest films ever made. That's what a lot of Pixar films fall into. They make you feel, and oftentimes leave you with a message you can carry into real life. What I really like about Soul is that the main character is unique. He's a middle-aged band teacher. We can relate to Joe here, from feelings on his ambitions in the film. I got miffed too when he died, because he was so close to success. I had secondhand embarrassment whenever he was in the hospital, because you can tell how upset he is. Soul does a great job at making you relate to Joe, because of the constant ups and downs. The aim of the writers was to make you want the best for his character, which kind of brings us into the third act of the film, because Joe's conviction is so strong as he finally goes back into his own body, and we see that when he finally performs through a wonderful jazz composition, and he does it. Then what? He achieved his goal, he made it. Then we get a really powerful scene with Dorothea in which he gives a really weird fish analogy, and I equated it to the idea that the journey itself kind of makes you subconsciously build up the destination to be something it isn't, and whenever you actually get there, it's kind of boring. Which is really bad to say, but it's relevant here, as throughout Joe's entire life, he's been constantly chasing the jazz dream, and he finally achieves it. Then what? See, all through Joe's life, Joe's completed purpose and passion, which I feel is best shown by his mom, who critiques his choices in pursuing his dream. It's incredibly difficult to explain my thoughts here, but the conflation of purpose and spark is why Joe felt so empty after performing with Dorothea. That's what's been built up the entire time. It's something that never really gets covered in media. What comes after you reach your goal? Joe did not know, and he lost his purpose, not knowing what to do with himself. This is where Joe seeks to go to the zone and see 22 again, after telling her she had no purpose, and to tell her she's ready to live. Because even after being quote unquote alive for a total of like an hour, she already had soul, as shown with her interactions of the supporting cast. In fact, the scene with Joe, 22 and Joe's mom is one of my favourite scenes in the film, as 22 seamlessly takes over Joe. This all ties into what makes the ending so lackluster for me. Throughout the entire film, Joe's been afraid of death, in pursuit of his dream. He finally achieved his dream, and no longer had a purpose. He accepted that he was wrong, and had nothing left, and went to tell 22 what she needed to hear, to move on and start living. Joe accepted that his time was up, and was willing to give up his life for another person to experience life. Keep in mind, he already cheated death like twice. Mans was already past his due date. Either way though, it was implied, to me, that Joe's real purpose was to give 22 purpose, and with that, he went back to the great beyond, accepting death. Until Jerry whatever the fuck comes out and tells him, Joe, you get a second chance. Despite Joe already cheating death like twice. Yeah, I had a change of heart rewatching the film, and I began to think that the film was actually well written, until I got to the ending for a second time, and felt even more miffed than I did the first time. The ending of Soul, whilst I understand it, I don't like it, because Joe's sacrifice meant nothing. Imagine how powerful the ending would have been if it was just Joe, finally walking towards the light, ending on a fade to white. But instead, no, Joe gets another chance at life, and for no reason whatsoever, other than being good at inspiring 22. No offense, but Joe's character in this film is an asshole, and the entirety of 22 walking a mile in Joe's shoes was entirely a rash and stupid mistake. The only development in Joe's character was when he realised that he achieved his goal, and felt very little. I would have liked Soul more if Joe died. Soul does leave you feeling something. If you take its message on board, I think it's one of the best Pixar movies. But what holds it back in my opinion is that the ending is lame, and even though I know that's the point, Joe was meant to get a second chance to appreciate life, I still find myself struggling to see how it's a meaningful ending and a justifiable one, but the lack of a good ending is what restricts it from being great. If you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, all that. Hope you had a lovely holiday season and Happy New Year.